Hey, good evening, Pascack families. I'm Sean Strunsis, District Supervisor of School Counseling for the Pascack Valley Regional High School District, and one of your hosts for this evening's program. I'd like to welcome you to our post-high school college planning night, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us. Our goal this evening over the next 1 hour is simple: to share information with you regarding the college application admissions process and to provide an overview on a number of college-related topics. Should you have a question during the presentation, I ask that you please post your question in the Q&A feature, which is located at the bottom of your screen, and know we will address questions at the end of the presentation. And thank you in advance. Last, please be reminded that tonight's program is just the beginning. Know that each student and family will have a one-on-one meeting with the respective counselor in the weeks ahead to tailor this process to the specific needs of each student. Families can anticipate hearing from the counselor in the very near future regarding an individual meeting date and time. But before we do begin the program, I would just like to take a moment to thank the counselors for taking time out of their personal schedules to participate in this webinar this evening. You'll be hearing from each of them very shortly. Now let's get started. Mr. Casamen, if you would kindly share your screen. And Mrs. Schneider, I'm going to turn the mic over to you. It's all yours. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Strunsis. Good evening, everyone. I'm Christina Schneider, and I am really excited to kick things off with all of you this evening. I speak for all of my fellow counselors when I say that we are really looking forward to starting this process with all of you and looking forward to meeting with each of you individually and to make sure that you know that this is exciting. And here we go. So tonight we're going to cover a variety of topics with regard to the college search, match, and application process. Right here, you can see an overview of what we're going to cover tonight. And we're going to start with evaluating the transcript, SATs versus ACTs, letters of recommendation, utilizing Naviance to its fullest, how to apply, the college essay, college visits, a general timeline, and our next steps. So let's move right along. So when my fellow counselors and I were brainstorming how to really start off this presentation this evening, we had a variety of ideas, but we kept landing back on the transcript because your high school transcript really tells your academic story that you've been writing since you first walked into the doors of Pascack Hills when you were a freshman. Seems like such a short time ago. So it contains your, it's a record of every class that you have ever taken here at Pascack Hills or throughout high school. And it shows the final grade that you've earned in each class, each year's GPA, your cumulative GPA. And how exciting that that story that you've been writing is essentially going to be the first thing that a college admissions officer will review when evaluating your application. So let's talk a little bit more in detail about this high school transcript, what it looks like, how to interpret it, and what it all means. So as you can see, this is a sample, a high school transcript from Pascack Hills for a student, a very popular young man, Justin Bieber. So young Justin Bieber is a senior this year, and you can see that his basic information is on the top left corner, and his entire transcript is divided into 4 quadrants. Top left starting with his freshman year, moving on to top right sophomore year, bottom left junior year, bottom right senior year. As you can see, there are grades for every course that he has taken and a list of those toward the left-hand side of the quadrant and his final grade for each class. You'll notice on the bottom right for his senior year that there are not yet final grades listed for his courses. And that's because those are the courses he is currently taking and has not yet completed. So when a college receives this transcript, this is generally what they'll see. You'll also notice that on the very bottom left of every single quadrant, you'll see a GPA that was calculated at the end of that school year. You'll notice at the very, very bottom of this sheet that there is a cumulative weighted GPA and a cumulative unweighted GPA. We'll get to that in a second. So what is a college looking at when they see a student's high school transcript? First of all, is the student consistent in their performance and in their courses? Or are there inconsistencies in that student's performance and courses? Is there a progression in their time throughout high school. For example, young Justin Bieber started out with 1 honors class freshman year, honors French 3. Perhaps he was French Canadian and spoke it fluently in his time growing up in Canada. Then, after a solid performance in various other courses, Justin decided to challenge himself and was given the opportunity to take an honors English class as a sophomore. And each year moving forward, his courses become more challenging and more rigorous. And Justin does a great job of improving every single year throughout high school as he grows, learns, matures, and evolves. So he's really doing great. You'll also notice that Justin's classes are very representative of what he'll likely study moving forward. For example, chamber choir, music theory, and obviously he's a musician, so that is reflective of that. However, understand that not every high school student knows exactly what it is they want to study when they go to college. And that's okay. So of course, we encourage that throughout high school, you maintain a well-rounded schedule and always try your best and always, seek an appropriate challenge and do your best to meet it. So can you just go back on that slide? I'm sorry about that, Mr. Casamento. Thank you. So again, I want to also bring your attention to the bottom left-hand corner of this sheet, which is the cumulative weighted GPA and the cumulative unweighted GPA. And you'll know for Justin, his weighted GPA is a 4.0, a tick above that, and his unweighted GPA is a 3.68. Why is that different? So at Pascack Hills, we use a 4.0 weighted GPA scale. And what that means is that the courses labeled honors or AP actually do just that, hold a little bit more weight, 1 point to be exact, in the calculation of the grade point average. So therefore, when they are calculated into his GPA, and if he earns an A in that class, it gives Justin the ability to earn above a 4.0 for his cumulative weighted GPA. The unweighted GPA represents the calculations if those honors or AP courses do not get the weight that we provide them when we do our school calculation. I hope that that's clear. Okay, Mr. Casamento, you can keep it rolling. Great. So when we send your official transcript to colleges, we also send all of the letters of recommendation from your teachers, from us, and the Pascack Hills High School school profile, which is a demographic record of the student population, all classes that are offered at PH, our grading scale, and other pertinent information that is usually required by a college admissions. Right below is a link to that school profile, which is updated every year and is also available on our website. So what's not included on the transcript? First of all, standardized test scores are not included on your transcript or on any other information that we send to the schools on your application list. No discipline record, no attendance record, no log of extracurricular activities or community service, and no class rank, as we do not rank. So the first thing I mentioned on this list here is standardized test scores. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and volley this over to Mrs. Donnelly, who's going to talk about that hot topic. Thanks, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mrs. Donnelly, and I am excited to be here this evening, and I'm going to talk to you a bit about SATs and ACTs. So in addition to your transcript, testing is another piece of information that schools will sometimes use to evaluate your application. And I stress the word sometimes because many schools are test optional, which is something we'll talk about in just a minute. Mr. Casamento, if you can go back, thank you. Here you'll see a breakdown of the ACT versus the SAT. Many students will often come to us and ask, which test should I take? The best way to know is really to utilize practice tests. Many of you have likely taken a PSAT, so you have some exposure to the SAT already. For the ACT, you can very easily visit ACT's website for free practice tests, and the same applies to College Board. There are many free online resources on both College Board and actstudent.org. I want to call your attention to a couple of things on this chart. First, we'll take a look at the science column. And you'll see there, or the science row, I guess I should say. You'll notice there that there is a science section on the ACT, but not on the SAT. This sometimes deters students, but especially those who may not feel as confident in the sciences, but it really shouldn't. The essay or the science section on the ACT rather really tests critical thinking skills, not your knowledge of biology, chemistry, and physics. So please don't let that deter you. You'll also notice if you look down a little bit lower under calculator policy that the SAT has a no calculator section for math, while the ACT allows you to use a calculator for all math problems. Another thing to note is when you look at the essay details, currently both tests have an optional essay, but it is important to note that SAT is phasing out their essay component. This June, in fact, is going to be the last administration of the essay. Now, if you are registered for an SAT already, you can choose to sit for the essay, or you can log into your College Board account to change your registration. Since the essay is being eliminated, it is unlikely that your schools will require it, but it is also suggested that you visit the websites of schools that you're interested in to check the requirements. Finally, at the bottom of this chart, you'll find the scoring. And the scoring on the ACT and SAT is very different. As you can see, the highest score you can receive on the ACT is a 36, while the highest score on the SAT is a 1600. If you take both tests, there are concordance charts that can help you compare your scores on these two tests. Next up, we'll talk about how to register. And that's what you'll find here. So there are direct links here to both College Board as well as actstudent.org. Each site will outline upcoming test dates and registration deadlines. You'll see that we've noted there, if you feel safe and comfortable testing, we do recommend that you sit for an exam. But many schools have announced that given the pandemic, they plan to remain test optional during the 2021-2022 admission cycle. Let's talk a little bit about test optional and test flexible. This is definitely some language that you are going to see as you are conducting some college research. I want to start by saying that test optional is not a new concept. Prior to the pandemic, there were many schools that were committed to a holistic review and allowed students the option of applying without a test score. Students sometimes fear that they might be penalized if they choose to not submit a score, but that's far from true. Schools are committed to being holistic, and certainly if you opt to take advantage of a policy that they have put into place, there will be no penalty. They'll just place more emphasis on your transcript, your letters of recommendation, your essay, and any other information that they may have available to them. Another term is test flexible. So some schools term test flexible as their policy, meaning that they'll accept an alternate test score. A PSAT or an AP score or something like that may be allowed in lieu of submitting an SAT or an ACT. Now, I mentioned that nearly all colleges were test optional or test flexible this past year, or for our current seniors. And you'll see there that more than half of the US colleges and universities have already announced that they'll be test optional for the fall of 2022 applicants. Fairtest.org, the website you see there at the bottom, estimates about 55% at the moment are currently planning to be test optional. And I wouldn't be too surprised if that number continues to increase. A question that often comes up is, maybe you have a score, but you're not sure whether or not you should submit it to a particular institution. That is a great conversation to have with your counselor. Certainly discuss that with your respective school counselor. We can help you evaluate what the average scores are and help you make an informed decision about what to submit and maybe what not to submit. So next up, we're going to be discussing letters of recommendation. I'm going to pass this off to Ms. Petzold.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alexa Petzold, and I am the school counselor filling in for Ms. Howard while she's out on leave. So I'm going to start off tonight by talking about teacher letter of recommendations. So first off, how many are needed? So while there are schools that will only require one letter, most schools do require two. So we do recommend identifying two teachers who you may want to have write your letters of recommendation. Most schools will also require a counselor letter. These are a little different, so you don't have to ask your counselor for this. We will automatically write this letter for you. So moving on to who should I ask? Ideally, you will want to ask teachers who know you well. These are the teachers that are going to write the strongest letters for you. We do recommend asking junior year teachers because they're the teachers that can speak to your most recent abilities as a student. If there's a teacher you had for 2 years, maybe you had them sophomore year and junior year, you might want to consider asking them because they can speak to your growth over time. Another thing to keep in mind is you might want to consider asking teachers who taught you in the discipline that you plan to major in. So if you plan to major in engineering, you might want to ask a math teacher and a science teacher. When should I ask? We do want you to ask spring of junior year. It's very important that you ask your teachers in person and have this conversation with them face to face. Of course, if your circumstances don't allow for that, an appropriate alternate here would be, requesting a Google Meet with them. So I'm just briefly going to go over here how to add your teachers on Naviance. So after that initial conversation with your teacher, you will go into Naviance and you will click the Colleges tab in the top right corner. From there, you'll see a drop down where you'll click the Colleges home, and it'll bring you to the Colleges homepage, and you'll scroll down to the Apply to College section and click the Letters of Recommendation link. So that will bring you to a page that looks identical to this one right here. And you'll see that number one question, who would you like to write this letter? You'll see that drop down. It will have every teacher here at Hills. So you can select the teacher who you are having write your letter, select that first one from number 2, send to all schools, and then submit the request. As soon as you do that, all of your teachers will be notified immediately that they can now go into Naviance and submit your letter. So I'm now going to pass it back to Mr. Casamento, who's going to talk a little bit more about Naviance.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for staying patient with me as I moved past slides a little too quickly sometimes. But I appreciate you guys being here, and I'm happy to share with my fellow counselors a lot of this important information that we're going to be discussing tonight. So one of the things that I really wanted to dive into, and some of you may know a lot of this information, others may not have been as familiar with this, but I want to cover Naviance because it's one of the most essential tools for post-high school planning. And I think that ultimately a lot of students and even parents think this is strictly for students who are looking to apply to college. This is a one-size-fits-all approach to really anything post-high school. So this introductory slide here is to show you how to access that this program. It's a college and career software program that you can, for students who have their MacBook open, can just go onto their Chrome, their Google Chrome, click on the pascac.org bookmarks that will be there already, and then they would click on Naviance for Hills students. Their username would be their email, and their password is already generated. It's typically their computer password with their year of graduation attached. But if for whatever reason we can't figure out what the password was, if you reset it, please reach out to one of us or your respective counselor, I should say, and we could reset that for you. So just hop on here. So I'm going to break things down for Naviance in 2 different ways. The first thing I want to talk about is what can I use Naviance for? So the first thing that you might remember when we talked about in our freshman conference in 9th grade is we introduced this concept of building a resume. So this is a tool that I think no matter what your plans are post high school, building a resume is going to be really helpful, and it's a really nice tool to use within Naviance because of how user friendly it is. We typically introduce it to 9th graders because we want them to start updating it as time goes on, rather than, I don't know about everyone else, but I don't remember what I did yesterday. So it's nice to be able to update that as the months go on and as the years go on, so that by the time our senior year comes, whether we're building a resume for a job application or a scholarship application, or we're applying to college, that will be all ready for you. Okay. Naviance is also there to access and explore resources for career opportunities. So you can see on here, I actually have career interest inventories, which is related to that, where you can actually take assessments. They're very well-known assessments that can that give you questions, and based off of those answers, actually generate reports and talk about your interests, talk about maybe what some of those interests and how they can relate to careers. And when you're looking at some of these career opportunities, you could look at what wages they may earn, down the road, or what type of environment that employee or employer would work at, so that you can get a educated and informed decisions on, what your next steps are. As far as the college portion of this program, you can certainly conduct a very extensive college search, which I will definitely get into in a few minutes. You can gain insight into a lot of academic programs at different schools, look at all the majors that they have, and even take a look into some of the campus life, which I will also talk about. Also, once you're starting to generate a list, which we will definitely be talking about in our junior conferences, this is where you can start to organize yourself. So you could add schools into colleges I'm thinking about, which ultimately will eventually be narrowed down to colleges I'm applying to by the time you're a senior and you're ready to send your applications. One of the things that we're going to talk about in our junior conferences is what's a reach, target, and safety school. And you might have heard those terms before. If you haven't, that's okay. We will certainly discuss those. But it's important to make a well-balanced list, and utilizing Naviance by evaluating our alumni admissions data and comparing your data to that can really help us to make informed decisions on what a balanced list might look like. And finally, you can also view a lot of scholarship opportunities that we have and we get throughout the year. And to be honest, a lot of times some of these applications are some of these scholarships are not applied to. So certainly take advantage of looking at some of these scholarships throughout the year and see if there are anything that you're eligible for. As far as what will I use Naviance for? So as Ms. Petzold talked to you about before, requesting teachers' letters of recommendation is really important, because that allows the teachers to send those letters to your school, because you will not be viewing those letters as a part of the FERPA statement that we will discuss a little bit later on. In terms of our counselor letter of recommendation that Ms. Petzold also mentioned, we have a student brag sheet that we provide. And what I usually like to tell students is, a lot of the times we develop pretty good and pretty strong relationships with, kids over 4 years, but ultimately there's a lot of times and a lot of things that we won't know. And because of that, we provide a 10-question questionnaire or survey, and it gives us an opportunity to hear from the students and get an idea of, what we don't know about them, or what we may not know yet. So that's something that we require for students to fill out by June. Also, we have Pascack Hills has college reps come to the high school every year in the fall. So students can sign up for those to meet with reps in person. Hopefully that will happen next year. If not, we also ran virtual meetings where we, between 3 and 6 o'clock in the fall, and you were able to sit with a small group of students from Pascack Hills only to meet with those admissions reps. So you could sign up for those on there. You will also do Common App matching. So that's something that you will discuss with your counselor, exactly what that looks like. But ultimately what that does is it allows us to, through the Common App, send your documents to your schools so that they're there on time and making sure that all of the colleges are receiving things in a timely manner. When you are filling out applications, you will find a lot of the frequently asked questions that come up when it comes to our school. And those answers will be posted on Naviance when your profile turns over to you being a senior. You can also update admissions results. So I know we're way down the road here. We're talking about the process, now we're talking about results. But ultimately, by this time next year, when our juniors are seniors and we are starting to hear back from colleges, this is where you can communicate with us as your counselor to let us know where you've been accepted to, where you might have been denied or deferred, so that we have updated information from you and can help advise you going forward. And then also this is where you will be able to view your GPA. And that's something that you will have access to and always have had access to on Naviance. So I'm just going to go through some brief pictures just to show you. This slideshow will be available, so you don't have to feel like you have to jot down notes of where to go. These will all be circled and easily accessed. But when we want to access the student brag sheet on the home page of Naviance, if you click on About Me and you click on My Stuff, you'll see up there I circled surveys, my surveys. That's where you're going to find the student brag sheet. And the resume, which hopefully a lot of students have already been updating, that is where you would also find the resume, where you can add extracurricular activities and things inside and outside of school in grades 9 through 12. So sometimes we don't know where to start, right? For those students who are deciding that college is the next step, it might be beneficial to start on Naviance. And the reason I say that is it has an excellent search engine where I circled here Supermatch and Advanced College Search, very similar. And also if you've visited schools, you can just type in a college name to add that to your thinking about list. But these tools allow you to, what's on the next slide, which is the Supermatch description here, is allows you to pick based off of criteria that you're interested in a college, and therefore generates a list at the bottom. So you can see you could put in must-haves, nice-to-haves, so that ultimately when you look down at the bottom, you can scroll through a bunch of schools that pop up there. The one thing I always tell students is to start off general, especially if you're really not sure where you want to be, what you want to be doing, or where you want to be going. It's nice to start off general, because if you get too specific, there'll only be 1 or 2 colleges. I like to joke that this Naviance tool is so specific, you can choose whether or not a school has a badminton club. So I really want you to make sure that you take time looking through this, and use this to your advantage, because I feel like sometimes it's underused by students. So certainly do that. This is the part that I talked about before when it comes to organizing your list. So this is my colleges I'm thinking about list, where you can see I added Adelphi and Georgetown and James Madison and University of Maryland in College Park. The one thing I wanted to point out here are the delivery types. So you'll see little computer screens here, which we are going to talk about a couple of the components within those computer screens. But just so you know now, the CA within the computer screen is the Common App, which Mrs. Donnelly is going to talk about in a few minutes. But the blank computer screen is a school-specific application or the coalition application. So that could mean that you will not find those schools on the Common App. And Georgetown sometimes likes to take things the old ancient way, and we have to send those via what I call the snail mail. But it also can be done sometimes online through their own individual portal. In terms of researching specific schools very quickly, this is when you actually have schools on your list. So just to hop back for a second, if I were to click on one of these schools, you would come up with a page similar to this. And this is where you could start researching that specific school. I think we all would recommend that you also travel over to their website. This is actually just a Naviance page, but it is a nice one-stop shop where you can look at, number one, some schools that might have overlap. So I like this school. What other schools are similar to this school, or what other schools have students applied to that have also applied to this school in the past? So that's definitely a good place to look. You could check out the scattergrams, which I'm going to show you briefly next, and just take a look at all of those deadlines in researching. So when I talked about evaluating alumni data, just very quickly, there are 3 main components to that in Naviance. And I will say that it is beneficial to look at your big futures and your college boards to see what the national data is for these schools. But very often when you're evaluating your reach, target, and safety schools, it's important to take into consideration that many schools are going to look at you in comparison to your classmates and the other students from the school that you're coming from. So in our case, Pascack Hills. So when you're looking at the one on the top right, says compare me, That is basically you at the top, and it presents your academic data and then lists the average academic data from all of the schools with the data from Pascack Hills High School. So this is not national data, but rather the data that we collect year after year from our students and the results of their applications. If you look at the one below that in the last 5 years, that's a little chart that you'll notice. It shows you how many students have applied in the last couple of years and how many students have been accepted. I think although we do collect data over a long period of time, it's very helpful to have more recent data so that we can evaluate what trends have been happening with those schools. And then finally, the scattergrams. And the scattergrams, I think we would all agree, is a really helpful tool because it can actually point you to specific students' academic data without mentioning names and seeing, obviously you can see those green check marks. Those are students who have been admitted, and those red X's are students who have been denied. So that can help you evaluate where you are in comparison to those schools. And finally, in terms of the career and career exploration, it's really important for you to get used to using this tool because, like I said before, it can give you access to different types of opportunities, the pathways to those opportunities. It's not necessarily always college. It talks about earning potential. It talks about, again, the environment in which these employees work. And I think it's nice to almost work backwards sometimes of what am I interested in studying? What am I interested in pursuing? And then seeing what pathways are to get there. And you can use a lot of a variety of resources that Naviance allows you to, including interviews from individuals who are in that field. So certainly take advantage of that. So I'm going to transfer it over to Mrs. Donnelly so she can talk a little bit about how to apply.
Thank you, Mr. Casamento. Okay, so here you'll see, different types of applications, some of which Mr. Casamento very briefly mentioned. The application that almost all of you will definitely use is going to be the common application because it's most widely accepted. And the benefit is that this allows you to use one application to apply to several colleges and universities. We'll take a closer look at the common app in just a moment. Another application that some of you may encounter is called the coalition application. Now, this application is sort of common, but it's at the same time not as widely accepted as the common app. It is utilized by some popular schools. For example, Rutgers. Rutgers allows students to apply either through their own school-specific application or the coalition app. Another example would be University of Maryland. Students can apply through the coalition app or the common app. When given the choice, we usually will recommend that students use the common app for ease of processing, but it's important to note that there really is no preference. Colleges, are happy to accept any application that they offer to applicants. And then finally, there are some schools that have their own application. In this case, you would have to go to the specific school's website. You would complete the application through the portal and submit it all through the individual school's site. The next screen we're going to take a look at just sort of shows you what you'll see when you visit commonapp.org. And to get started, you would start by clicking on the Create an Account button in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. Once you do that, you would then go to this screen where you would see Let's Get Started, and you would indicate that you are applying as a first-year student. A couple of things to note. When you're creating your account, be sure to use an email that you check regularly. Also make sure that your email address is appropriate for an admissions office to see. And as noted on the right-hand side, you can create this account at any time, but the application will update on August 1. So if you were to create the account today, you could start filling in information, but all that information would then roll over into the new version of the application that goes live on August 1st for the next admission cycle. Once you log in, you will see this welcome screen. And the first thing would be to either start filling out the Common App itself, the actual body of the application, or in this case, we're going to start by adding a college to the Common application. So you'll see that we have college search circled. And once you click on that, it will bring you to this screen that you see here. There's a college or city name and a search box there. You'll see that I typed in the College of New Jersey. If you type in a school name, it should pop up for you the way it did here. If you do not see a result, perhaps there's a typo, maybe just double check that you have the name of the school correct, or perhaps it's not a Common Application school. When you click on Add College, it's going to add that college to your specific Common App account. So once you do that, you're then going to take a look at your My Colleges tab. Mr. Casamento, thank you. Perfect. So when you click on My Colleges, you'll then see on the far left how the College of New Jersey now appears under My Colleges list. And what I want to point out to you is that you'll see here under college information, the first thing is questions. So for each school, you're going to be responding to member-specific questions. Here's where you may be asked to indicate your major or your school of choice, activities of interest, things that you might want to participate in when you get to campus. And perhaps you might even be asked to respond to some, short answer questions here as well. Once you complete each section, you'll see a green check mark, and this is confirmation that you have completed the required questions in each section. I find Common App to be very user-friendly, and it's nice that you do need to have those check marks in order to proceed with submitting the application. So you really can't submit something that is incomplete. I'll also note that you'll see that there's a check mark next to something that says recommenders and FERPA. This is something that we'll dive into in more detail in the fall when it's time to link your Common App and your Naviance accounts. And again, that really goes with how we transmit documents, but that's really most appropriate for the fall when we are in the process of sending your paperwork. The next slide is going to highlight some of the components of the Common application. So as you'll see here on the far left, the body of the Common App includes a profile section, which is some identifying information, a family section. They want to know, do you have siblings, parents, where did your parents go to school, what's their highest level of education, things of that nature. Under education, you'll indicate that you're a student at Pascack Hills High School. You'll enter some information about your senior year courses, your GPA. There's a testing section. You have the option of reporting SAT or ACT scores, but that's not a required section. You can choose not to self-report them. There's also an activities section, and I want to just kind of take a moment to pause and talk about this one a little bit more. The activity section allows you to report up to 10 activities. We suggest that you organize these activities in an order that prioritizes the things that are most meaningful to you. For example, if you have been a 4-year member of, let's say, Teens Against Cancer, and you hold an executive position as a senior, it's likely that that would be towards the top of your list rather than at the bottom. And then the other piece you'll see here is the writing section, which is the college essay. And I'm going to pass the torch over to Mrs. Schneider, who will talk a bit about that.
Hi again, everyone. So your college essay, think about it for a second. The essay is the only opportunity that an applicant gets for them to showcase their voice, personality, and perspective. Unless, of course, a school conducts a college interview, that's a different story. But in your application, this is the only chance for you to really show who you are, how you sound, where you're coming from. So I think this is the coolest part of the application, quite frankly, and I hope that you'll think so too. So our advice is to really just take advantage of this chance to let schools to get to know you. Just beyond your grades, beyond your resume, beyond your test scores, like what really makes you tick and who you really are. So the Common application gives students a number of different prompts to be able to do that. So these are the most updated essay prompts of the Common Application for the 2021-2022 application season. Year after year, they oftentimes look very similar to one another. And you'll see that they cover a broad range of topics. For example, you get to speak about your background, identity, interests, or talent, something that's really meaningful to you, a lesson or an obstacle that you have learned or overcome that's been a fundamental basis of your success, or a reflection, perhaps, maybe, or when you were questioning a core belief or idea in your own life. Number 4, actually, this year, is a new prompt that the Common Application is offering students the chance to write about, which I think is really cool and timely. So reflect on something that someone has done for you that has made you happy or thankful in a surprising way. How has this gratitude affected or motivated you? What an awesome chance to be able to talk about something personal, something meaningful, someone or something who has really helped to shape you and your future goals. Different accomplishments, maybe something more along the lines of a topic or idea or concept that you find engaging. Of course, you could read these much more thoroughly on your own. But let's say none of them really connect to you just yet, or at all. You are even given the opportunity to kind of go rogue and share an essay on a topic of your choice. Perhaps something you've already written, or respond to kind of your own sort of prompt, like something that really inspires you. So basically the sky's the limit, but there are some tips to keep in mind as you write your essay and you start to brainstorm and draft. So here's just a few easy to refer back to college essay tips of do's and don'ts. So things that you want to make sure you're definitely doing as you write your essay. Reveal something personal about yourself and your life. Like we said, this is your only chance to do that. Show your knowledge about the college, if appropriate, and when you're able to. If you are writing a college-specific essay for, whether it's the questions portion of an application, or if you're completing a school-specific application, now's your chance to show something about that school that is really appealing to you. Do use your voice. Reveal how you sound. My favorite essays to read are the ones from students who, as I read them, I can hear their voice reading it to me in my head, the most authentic ones. Double check that you've addressed the prompt and have no spelling or grammatical errors. So read your essay out loud. Read it to someone else who can give you that sort of feedback to make sure that it's clear, concise, correct, both in spelling and in grammar, because of course we can't forget our fundamentals, right? Do seek feedback from a small number of people who know you and know your voice. Too many cooks in the kitchen is not always a great idea. So be strategic in terms of who you share this essay with. Make sure it's someone who knows you, who knows your views, perspectives, points of view, and again, who can really hear you reading it as they read it to themselves, and whose feedback will reflect what they know and appreciate about you and your writing style. Most importantly, definitely have fun with your essay. Sometimes that's the best way to be your most authentic self and let it evolve in an organic, natural way. And that's when they become the most effortless and fun to write. On the flip side, there are also some things that you want to make sure that you avoid. Don't use your essay to repeat your resume. A college admissions team can see all of your activities, all of your community service in various spots in your admissions file. So take this opportunity to, share something new. Don't copy and paste. Don't look for something that that sounds good on the internet. Don't be too closely inspired by something else that you've read. You want to be unique to yourself. Don't embellish or exaggerate. Sometimes the truest you is exactly what a college might be looking for. So stay true to yourself, stay honest, and don't make things a bigger deal than they might be, or don't add flowery details that might start to stretch the truth. Don't say what you think an admissions office wants to hear, because first of all, we have no idea necessarily specifically what they want to hear. And secondly, then you start to stray from, again, your true authentic self and your voice. Don't rely on spell check and grammar check. So often when we read a piece of writing aloud, we start to see where we might be slipping up on our grammar, or our word choice might not be exactly what we want it to be, or we notice a spelling error that may have been hidden in the first drafts that we went through. Biggest one, don't panic. Again, this essay is a reflection of you and who you are. And any admissions office or team would be able to appreciate that if you're staying true to who you are and revealing something about yourself that comes beyond just what they see in your application. So have fun with this. I know I speak for the entire counseling team when we say that we do enjoy reading college essays of our students, because oftentimes it gives us a new window into something that we may not have otherwise known about them. And we can give that real constructive feedback, yet staying true to the goal. Let's hear your voice. Now I'm gonna toss this over to Ms. Petzold.
Thank you, Ms. Schneider. So I'm going to get into college fairs and visits. So we have here a few organized events that our students can attend in order to learn more about the schools they're interested in. So you'll see that first one is our school's college fair. And then the bottom two are sponsored by the National Association for College Counseling and the College Board. So just a little bit about what these typically look like. They're a great opportunity for students to get to know the reps, ask questions, get to know the local reps. And I say that's important because a lot of times, those reps are the people who may directly be reviewing our students' applications. So it can be a really good idea to get to know them and build a relationship with them. And then college visits. So obviously this is a very important part of determining if the school is a good fit for you. So right now, students can do virtual tours or in-person tours. Many campuses are back to offering in-person organized tours or self-guided tour. In the event you can't get to the campus in person, you definitely can do a virtual college tour. So you'll see here, there's 3 different links. Each one of these links will bring you to a different online database where you can search for a specific school and be brought directly to their virtual tour. Also, another great place to look if you know you want to do a virtual tour is right on the college's website. There's usually this information on their admission page, or you can call their admissions office. And then additionally, our school will be offering virtual college rep sessions. I know Mr. Casamento touched on this, but you can register for those through Naviance in the fall. These opportunities are similar to the college, fairs, where you can kind of talk with the reps and ask them questions about the school. So this is an example of a virtual tour by UVisit. So that was the first link on the last page. You can see this is Penn State. I personally really like this website. I think it's very comprehensive. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a map of the campus, which you can enlarge. There's a bunch of different pictures. And then on the right, you have your own little mini tour guide who speaks to you the whole time and talks about, different parts of the campus and the different academic programs. So I definitely recommend utilizing this if you don't think you can physically get on a campus. Mr. Casamento is going to finish us off here with a timeline of events.
All righty. So thank you for having me back after my long-winded chat before. But I just wanted to quickly run through the rest of just a kind of a timeline of events. A lot of the things on the left with the spring and summer and fall are things that we covered. So feel free to read through those and understand kind of the order of which things happen. We're also going to be discussing this and sending out, which I will discuss in the next slide, a little checklist for you so you can follow through with those steps. But I did want to touch on the application types and deadlines. Many of these terms you might have already heard before, but just to quickly and informally give you some information about that. Early decision, many of you might have heard as early decision as a binding agreement. So you're only allowed to apply to one school early decision. Many may ask, does that give you an advantage in the application process? It certainly can. I'm not going to say it happens all the time or you're guaranteed admission through early decision, but it is something that is a commitment to the college. So if you were to be accepted to that school via early decision, you would have to attend. So it does become a big family decision and something that's important to discuss before deciding on that. You'll often see early decision and early action, also priority deadlines, which I'm going to be talking about next, in November, November 1st, November 15th, sometimes even December 1st. Early action is just realistically, I apply early, I hear back early. So again, that's going to be something that is in November 1st, November 15th, and you'll typically hear by the end of December, maybe early January, and hear back 1 of 3 responses. So for early decision or early action, you could be accepted, you can be denied, or you can be deferred, which deferred just means deferring to that regular decision pool at the bottom, which is just a later date. Okay. As far as rolling admission schools goes, rolling admissions, I like to describe it as schools accepting students as they apply. So if a student applies in October, they may hear back in a few weeks and get a response from the schools, whereas someone might apply later on in December and then would get responses thereafter. So we do encourage students, if you are applying to any rolling schools, that you do try to prioritize those to give yourself the best chance for admission. And the last thing I like to talk about is priority. It's something you may not see as often, but you might see it a lot with rolling admission schools. And priority is exactly what it sounds like. When you're applying through the priority decision or the admission pool, your application takes priority if you submit it on or before that date. So if there are other strong applicants after that date, but a lot of the student body for the freshman class is filled through the priority deadline, those students will not be considered before the students who submitted prior to the priority deadline. You might also see priority be associated with financial aid opportunities. You might see that with any honors programs or academic programs that you're applying to, or you might even see it for potentially housing, available housing for students. So that's something to consider and look at based off of the schools that you're applying to, if you do notice that they have a priority deadline. One last thing I want to mention in the summer fall portion, the financial aid application, the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, is starting to be available on 10/1, so you can begin to fill that out then. You want to also check the colleges if they require the CSS profile, which is just another more in-depth version of the FAFSA. And some colleges will require that to receive financial aid. So please make sure that you're looking on your respective schools' websites to make sure that you're filling out all that they need for that. So what's next? As we said in the beginning, Dr. Strunsis mentioned that we are going to be reaching out to families individually over the coming weeks to schedule an appointment to meet with us personally. And I think that gives us an opportunity to talk about the specifics and your unique circumstances and provide this opportunity for you to see the general process. Please know that we are with you every step of the way. So I like to consider this like the opening ceremony of the Olympics. It's that big show that happens in the beginning, but there's way more activities going on as time goes on. So please feel free to reach out to us even after our meeting, and as you learn more about the colleges that you're applying to, or even have questions about the careers that you're interested in pursuing one day. All right. I'm going to bring it back over to Dr. Strunsis so he can open up the Q&A.
Thank you, Mr. Casamento, and thank you to all the counselors. So let's take a look at the Q&A box. I know we have a couple of questions that are here. First and foremost, is this being recorded? Yes, it is. Okay, and our plan is to be able to post this on our school counseling webpage tomorrow during the day. Give us a couple hours in the morning to get that done, okay? But certainly by the end of the day, This presentation will be made available on our school counseling webpage, so you can look for it and certainly view it there. Okay. We have a second question here. If you take the SAT multiple times and send your scores each time, will the schools that you have sent your scores to look at your best scores? Okay. Yes, first remember that majority of colleges and universities, as was discussed previously, okay, are and will be test optional. Okay, but if your scores put you in a positive light, in a great place, and that's a conversation with your counselor to have, okay, then by yes, we do encourage you to send your SAT scores and or your ACT scores, okay, depending on which one, again, looks better for you. Okay, again, that's a conversation for you to have with your school counselor. Okay, but know this, many colleges and universities do use, okay, this information, okay, both the SAT and the ACT. Right? Some schools will super score, meaning that if you take the exam more than one time and you submit multiple scores, they'll take the highest score from each particular section. And again, this is a conversation that you would want to have with your counselor before you send any scores, SAT and or ACT. Will you send this webcast out as a reply? Again, yes, we will. It will be posted on our website, on our school counseling webpage. Okay. And again, yes, will we get a copy of this presentation? Seems like a popular question tonight. Yes, again, okay, this will be posted on our webpage. Okay, you can find it there tomorrow. Okay, certainly give us a couple of hours to do that, but certainly by the end of the day, will be posted on the school counseling webpage. And then, how do you cancel the essay portion of your SAT for the Pascack Hills test that is being given on March 24th? I'm going to let Mr. Casamento, our SAT coordinator, take that question.
Hi, everyone. So as the SAT coordinator, we did provide an opportunity when the College Board released information that the essay was no longer going to be part of the test after the June administration for students to withdraw their essay components to this test. Unfortunately, that time has passed. The deadline is passed. So students will have to take the essay portion if they have already signed up for it. But going forward, feel free to not sign up for either of our other two exams that are, as of right now, are still running. One being the first week in May and then the first week in June. So there will still be opportunities to take the SAT without the essay in both of those months. But otherwise, the essay component is typically only an extra 50 minutes. So it won't really make a massive difference with regard to timing that day.
Thank you, Mr. Casamento. And I see an additional question came in while you were addressing that question. It says, how can we determine what schools take a super score for the SAT or the ACT? Great question. Okay, I would refer you to the webpage of specifically the admissions office to those colleges and universities that you're applying to. They should be able to share that information. We'll be able to share that information in terms of how they're approaching scoring with the SAT and or the ACT. And if you're unable to find that information on the school webpage, the college university webpage, by all means, reach out to your school counselor. He or she may be able to have additional resources that they may be able to use to help you with that question. Okay, but again, one of the greatest places, if you cannot, okay, find it on the college or university website, specifically the admissions page, reach out to your school counselor. Okay. And is there another question that came in? Is there a cost to applying for colleges, and what might that be? Yes, almost all colleges and universities, okay, do charge a fee for the application process. It can range anywhere between $40, $50 up to sometimes $75 per school. Okay, again, that information will also be posted on the college and university's admissions webpage. Okay, there are opportunities, okay, for students perhaps to receive a fee waiver. And if that might be something you would be interested in or would need to pursue, again, please see your school counselor and he or she will be able to walk you through that process. Okay, but there is a slight fee for each application to the college and university in which you're applying to. Okay. And then here, an additional question came in. Do colleges usually look at the regular GPA or the weighted GPA? As was discussed earlier this evening, okay, we do provide colleges and universities with both weighted GPA and unweighted, or what's described here or asked here, the regular GPA. And again, that becomes a university decision. Some colleges and universities have their own system in terms of weighting, and they'll strip weights that all students, colleges, excuse me, at all high schools send to them. Some colleges and universities will accept what's reported to them. But again, with more than 4,000 colleges and universities in the country, that becomes an institutional university decision. Again, that information should be posted on the admissions page of each college and university. And again, a conversation with your school counselor as well. And I think we've covered all of the questions that are in our Q&A box here. So with that said, and being mindful and respectful of everyone's time, I want to thank the entire Pascack Hills community for coming out this evening, joining us whether you are at home, in your office, on your phone somewhere. But we hope this information was helpful, that this evening was helpful. Again, I'd like to thank the entire Pascack Hills counseling team for making themselves available. And again, as Mr. C indicated a couple minutes ago, each one of your counselors will be reaching out to you to schedule an individual appointment to further discuss this, to personalize this process. And know that not only are they a great resource for each one of you, but we are here to assist you and to support you throughout this entire process. So with that said, I will bid the Pascack Hills family and community a good night. Okay, happy Tuesday evening, and we look forward to seeing you in person in the office, here in school, and certainly on Zoom or on Google Meets. And until then, okay, continue to stay well, be healthy, and we look forward, like I said a moment ago, to assisting you and your family throughout this entire process. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.